Picture this, you're a Stone Age woman, and you've just felt that first unmistakable contraction. Your water breaks, and panic doesn't even begin to describe what you're feeling. Because unlike today, where we have hospitals on every corner, and medical professionals trained for years to handle complications, you have absolutely nothing. No sterile environment, no understanding of germs, no emergency C-sections if things go wrong. You're about to face one of nature's most dangerous challenges with nothing but your bare hands and whatever knowledge the women around you have managed to piece together through trial and error. The statistics are absolutely brutal. While we don't have exact numbers from 40,000 years ago, anthropologists estimate that maternal mortality rates during the Stone Age could have been as high as 15 to 20%. That means 1 in every 5 women who went into labor never made it out alive. Compare that to today's rate of about 0.02% in developed countries, and you start to understand just how terrifying pregnancy was for our ancestors. But here's what makes it even more heartbreaking. These women had no idea why things went wrong when they did. They didn't understand that unwashed hands could introduce deadly infections, or that a baby in the wrong position could mean certain death. Without surgical intervention, they lived in a world where bleeding out after birth was just something that happened sometimes, where babies got stuck during delivery with no medical tools to help, and where something as simple as the placenta not detaching properly could kill a perfectly healthy woman within hours. The environment itself was working against them. Stone Age women gave birth in caves, makeshift shelters, or sometimes completely exposed to the elements. There were no clean sheets, no running water, no way to maintain the sterile conditions we know are crucial for preventing infection. Rain, cold, wild animals, all of these were constant threats that could turn an already dangerous situation into a complete nightmare. What's even more shocking is that these women often went into labor while their tribes were on the move. Nomadic lifestyle didn't stop for pregnancy, so imagine being in active labor while your entire community is trying to migrate to find food, or escape harsh weather. Some women literally had to give birth on the trail, then get back up and keep walking within hours because staying behind meant certain death from exposure or predators. The lack of nutritional knowledge made everything worse. Stone Age women often suffered from malnutrition, anemia, and vitamin deficiencies that we now know can cause serious complications during pregnancy and childbirth. Their bodies were already weakened by the constant struggle for survival, making them less equipped to handle the massive physical demands of labor. Calcium deficiency could lead to pelvic deformities that made natural birth nearly impossible, while lack of proper protein meant their bodies couldn't recover from the trauma of delivery. Then there were the complications that we can easily treat today but were automatic death sentences back then. Eclampsia, where blood pressure spikes dangerously during pregnancy, would cause seizures and death with no way to intervene. Placental abruption, where the placenta separates from the uterine wall, would cause massive internal bleeding that these women had no way to stop. Breech births, where the baby comes feet first, often meant losing both mother and child because there was no knowledge of how to safely deliver a baby in this position. Perhaps most terrifying of all was postpartum, hemorrhaging, uncontrolled bleeding after birth. Modern medicine can stop this with medications and emergency procedures, but Stone Age women just had to hope their bodies would figure it out on their own. Many didn't. They would survive the actual birth only to bleed to death hours later while holding their newborn babies, completely helpless as their life slowly drained away. The psychological terror must have been overwhelming. Every pregnant woman knew that she might not survive, that her children could lose their mother, that her partner might have to raise their baby alone, yet somehow they found the courage to keep going, to keep bringing new life into this brutal world. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about these Stone Age mothers. They didn't just survive by accident. They developed an incredible network of knowledge and support that was passed down through generations of women. While they didn't understand the science behind what they were doing, they figured out through countless generations of trial and error which practices actually helped, and which ones were deadly. These women became experts at reading the signs of labor, understanding when something was going wrong even without medical training. They learned to recognize the difference between normal labor pain and the kind of pain that meant serious complications. They developed techniques for helping babies who were stuck, ways to stop bleeding using natural remedies, and positions that made delivery easier and safer. The community aspect was crucial. Stone Age societies understood that birth was too dangerous for a woman to face alone, so they created support systems where experienced mothers would attend every birth. These weren't just emotional support. These women became the closest thing to medical professionals that existed. They accumulated decades of hands-on experience, learning from every birth they attended, both the successful ones and the tragic failures. What's remarkable is how this knowledge spread. Without written language, everything had to be passed down through oral tradition and direct demonstration. Older women would teach younger ones everything they knew about pregnancy and childbirth, creating an unbroken chain of survival wisdom that stretched back thousands of years. This wasn't just casual advice. This was literally life or death, information that could mean the difference between a woman living or dying. The tools they created were ingenious in their simplicity. Sharp stones for cutting umbilical cords, specific plants that could help with pain or infection, techniques for positioning laboring women to help gravity assist with delivery, figured out that certain herbs could help stop bleeding, that massage could help with pain, that staying upright during labor was often easier than lying down. Yet despite all this accumulated wisdom, childbirth remained incredibly dangerous. These women were essentially performing emergency medicine with Stone Age technology, and the margins for error were razor thin. When a Stone Age woman went into labor, she didn't face it alone, and thank God for that, because solitary birth would have been a virtual death sentence. Instead, something incredible happened. The moment those first contractions started, an entire network of women would spring into action like a perfectly coordinated emergency response team. This wasn't just neighborly help, this was a life-or-death support system that had evolved over thousands of years. The most important person in this birth squad was usually an older woman who had survived multiple births herself and had helped deliver countless babies. Think of her as the Stone Age equivalent of a head nurse in a modern delivery room, except her training came from decades of raw experience rather than medical school. These women, often called wise women or birth keepers, held the accumulated knowledge of generations in their minds. They knew which signs meant trouble, which techniques could save a stuck baby, and most importantly, when to make the heartbreaking decision that a mother couldn't be saved. But it wasn't just one experienced woman. Typically, 3 to 5 women would gather around a laboring mother. Each had a specific role that had been refined through countless births. One might specialize in managing pain through massage and positioning. Another might be expert at reading the signs of complications, while a third might be responsible for preparing the tools and materials they'd need. This division of labor was crucial because Stone Age birth was incredibly unpredictable, and having multiple experts meant they could handle whatever crisis emerged. What's fascinating is how these women earned their positions. You couldn't just declare yourself a birth attendant, you had to prove your worth over years of apprenticeship. Young women would start by helping with the simplest tasks, gradually working their way up as they demonstrated competence and earned the trust of the community. The stakes were too high for anything less than absolute expertise, because one mistake could cost both mother and baby their lives. These birth squads also served as the keepers of crucial tribal knowledge. They knew the family histories, understood which bloodlines had difficult births, and could predict potential complications based on a woman's previous pregnancies. The rituals and superstitions these women developed might seem primitive to us today, but many actually had real medical benefits that they discovered through pure trial and error. For instance, they learned that certain plant extracts could help with pain management, and modern science has confirmed that many of these contained compounds, similar to what we find in today's pain medications. They developed elaborate cleansing rituals before birth that, while not perfect, did help reduce the risk of infection. The psychological support these women provided was just as crucial as their practical skills. Labor in the Stone Age could last for days, and without the mental strength to endure that kind of prolonged agony, many women would have simply given up. The birth attendants became master motivators, using songs, stories, and encouragement to keep laboring mothers focused and fighting. They understood that the mind-body connection was real, that a woman who lost hope would be more likely to have complications. They also served as the decision-makers when things went terribly wrong. In situations where modern doctors might perform emergency surgery, these Stone Age midwives had to make brutal calculations about who could be saved. Sometimes this meant making the devastating choice to prioritize the mother's life over the baby's, or vice versa. These weren't medical decisions, they were survival decisions made by women who had seen enough tragedy to understand the harsh mathematics of Stone Age birth. The birth squad also managed the immediate aftermath of delivery, which was often just as dangerous as the birth itself. They knew how to help deliver the placenta safely, how to recognize and treat postpartum bleeding, and how to care for newborns who weren't breathing or were otherwise in distress. They understood that the first few hours after birth were critical, and they had techniques for handling common emergencies that could kill both mother and child. Perhaps most importantly, these women served as the emotional anchor for the entire experience. They had seen it all, the triumphant births where everyone survived, and the heartbreaking losses where they couldn't save anyone. Their presence alone provided comfort because laboring women knew they weren't facing this ordeal with complete amateurs. The community support extended far beyond just the birth itself. These Stone Age societies understood that a new mother needed weeks of recovery time, and they organized themselves to make that possible. Other women would take over the new mother's daily responsibilities, gathering food, preparing meals, caring for older children while she focused entirely on healing and bonding with her newborn. This postpartum care was revolutionary for its time and honestly puts many modern societies to shame. Stone Age communities recognized that childbirth was traumatic both physically and emotionally, and they created support networks that lasted for months after delivery. The same women who had attended the birth would continue checking on the new mother, monitoring her recovery, and providing advice about breastfeeding and infant care. A powerful scene of multiple Stone Age mothers sharing the responsibility of nursing babies, including orphaned infants whose mothers didn't survive childbirth. The image shows the communal approach to child survival and the bonds between women. Style: digital painting in an oil paint-inspired hyper-realistic style with rich texturing and visible painterly strokes. Dominantly warm earth tones, ochres, browns, dark reds, with contrast from cool blues and grays. Strong cinematic lighting with deep shadows and sharp highlights. Prehistoric valley setting with Stone Age humans in animal skins showing dramatic, survival-focused emotional intensity. What's most remarkable is how these birth squads created a sense of sisterhood that transcended normal tribal relationships. Women who might not have much in common in daily life would come together during labor, united by their shared understanding of what childbirth demanded from the female body and spirit. They developed bonds forged in life and death, situations that lasted their entire lives. These weren't just social gatherings, they were survival networks that quite literally kept our species going during humanity's most vulnerable period. Without these incredible women supporting each other through the brutality of Stone Age birth, many of us simply wouldn't exist today. Let me paint you a picture that will make you appreciate modern pain management in ways you never imagined. You're in active labor, contractions are tearing through your body every few minutes, and the pain is so intense you can barely think straight. Now imagine that there's no epidural coming, no nitrous oxide to take the edge off, no IV drip with pain medications. The only thing standing between you and complete agony is your own mental strength and whatever primitive pain relief your Stone Age sisters have managed to figure out through pure desperation. The level of pain Stone Age women endured during childbirth was absolutely staggering. We're talking about labor that could last anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, or even longer with nothing but willpower to get through it. Modern women who've experienced natural childbirth often describe it as the most intense pain imaginable, but at least they know that medical help is available if things get too overwhelming. Stone Age women had no such safety net. They went into labor knowing that they'd have to endure whatever their body threw at them, no matter how excruciating. But here's what's absolutely incredible. These women developed their own methods for managing pain that were surprisingly sophisticated. They discovered that certain positions could make contractions more bearable. Instead of lying flat on their backs like we see in old movies, Stone Age women instinctively figured out that staying upright, squatting, or getting on hands and knees allowed gravity to help and reduce the intensity of pain. They learned that movement was crucial. Walking, swaying, and changing positions constantly helped them cope with each wave of agony. They also mastered the power of breathing techniques thousands of years before modern Lamaze classes existed. Through trial and error, they discovered that deep controlled breathing could help them ride out contractions instead of fighting against them. They developed rhythmic breathing patterns, often accompanied by humming or chanting, that helped focus their minds and reduce their perception of pain. The mental techniques they used were just as important as the physical ones. Stone Age women learned to enter almost trance-like states during labor, using meditation and visualization to mentally separate themselves from the physical trauma their bodies were experiencing. The primitive pain relief methods these women discovered would make modern pharmacists weep with admiration. Without any understanding of how drugs actually worked, they experimented with every plant, root, and herb they could find, slowly building a natural pharmacy through generations of desperate trial and error. Some of these discoveries were remarkably effective, willow bark, which contains the same compounds found in modern aspirin, became a go-to pain reliever. They found that certain mushrooms could induce altered states of consciousness that helped women dissociate from their pain. But the reality was that most of their herbal remedies provided only minimal relief compared to what we have today. A woman in prolonged labor might chew on pain-relieving roots for hours and still experience agony that would hospitalize a modern person. They learned to make teas from specific plants that could help with nausea and cramping, but when push came to shove literally, they still had to endure the full force of childbirth. With their nervous systems firing at maximum intensity, the physical techniques they developed were ingenious. Hot stones wrapped in animal skins became heating pads for aching backs and cramping abdomens. They discovered that firm pressure on specific points of the body could provide temporary relief, essentially inventing acupressure thousands of years before it was formally recognized. Massage became a crucial part of labor management, with experienced women knowing exactly where to apply pressure to help ease a laboring mother's suffering. Water therapy was another breakthrough. When available, Stone Age women learned that sitting in warm streams or having warm water poured over their bodies could provide significant pain relief. The buoyancy and heat helped relax tense muscles and provided a temporary escape from the intensity of contractions. Of course, this was only possible when water sources were available and safe, which wasn't always the case. The mental endurance required was beyond anything most of us can imagine. These women had to find ways to cope with pain levels that would send modern people into shock, and they had to maintain enough mental clarity to participate actively in their own birth process. They couldn't just zone out completely, they needed to stay alert enough to push when necessary, change positions as directed by their attendants, and respond to emergencies. What's truly heartbreaking is understanding the complications that could arise without any medical intervention available. When babies got stuck during delivery, something called dystocia, modern doctors can perform emergency C-sections or use specialized tools to safely extract the infant. Stone Age women had to rely on their birth attendants physically manipulating the baby's position, often causing excruciating additional pain to both mother and child. Sometimes these attempts worked, but often they resulted in internal injuries that led to infection and death. Breech births, where babies come out feet first, were particularly nightmarish. The birth attendants had learned some techniques for helping turn babies or assisting with breech deliveries. But these procedures were incredibly painful and often unsuccessful. Women experiencing breech births often endured hours of additional labor as their helpers tried everything they knew to save both mother and baby. The terror of not knowing when the pain would end was perhaps worse than the pain itself. Modern women in labor know that if complications arise, doctors can intervene. Stone Age women just had to keep enduring whatever was happening to their bodies, sometimes for days on end, with no guarantee that either they or their babies would survive the ordeal. Yet somehow, through sheer force of will and the support of their sisters, many of these women not only survived but went on to have multiple children. They developed an almost supernatural pain tolerance and mental toughness that's hard for us to comprehend today. They learned to find strength they didn't know they possessed, to keep fighting when every instinct told them to give up. The aftermath was often just as brutal as the birth itself. Without modern pain medications, recovering from childbirth meant enduring days or weeks of continued agony from tears, bruising, and internal trauma. These women had to heal naturally, while also caring for their newborns and resuming their daily survival tasks. Their resilience in the face of such overwhelming physical trauma represents one of humanity's greatest triumphs over adversity. Every single one of us exists because Stone Age women found ways to endure the unendurable. Here's something that will blow your mind. Despite facing odds that would terrify any modern person, Stone Age women didn't just survive childbirth, they thrived. They went on to have multiple children, often 5 to 8 babies over their lifetime, knowing full well that each pregnancy was essentially rolling the dice with death. This wasn't ignorance or lack of choice. This was raw, uncompromising determination to continue the human story no matter what obstacles stood in their way. Don't think about the incredible mental strength this required. Every Stone Age woman who became pregnant had probably witnessed other women die in childbirth. They'd seen the blood, heard the screams, watched babies and mothers slip away despite everyone's best efforts. Yet when their own time came, they didn't just accept their fate, they fought for their lives and their children's lives with everything they had. This level of courage makes modern extreme sports look like casual hobbies. What's truly remarkable is how these women transformed their trauma into wisdom. Instead of being broken by the brutality of Stone Age birth, they used their experiences to become better prepared for future pregnancies. Women who survived difficult labors became the most valued birth attendants because they understood, from the inside, what other mothers were going through. They turned their personal hell into life-saving knowledge for their daughters and granddaughters. The physical adaptations these women developed over generations were extraordinary. Natural selection meant that women with wider pelvises, stronger uterine muscles, and better pain tolerance were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. But it wasn't just about genetics. These women also developed incredible physical conditioning through their daily lives of hunting, gathering, and constant movement that made them far stronger than most modern women entering childbirth. Their recovery abilities were superhuman by today's standards. While modern women typically take weeks to recover from natural childbirth and months from C-sections, Stone Age mothers were often back on their feet within days, carrying their newborns while continuing their essential survival tasks. They had no choice but to bounce back quickly, and somehow their bodies found ways to heal and strengthen that we're still trying to understand. But perhaps the most incredible aspect of Stone Age maternal resilience was their ability to create joy and meaning in the midst of such danger and hardship. These weren't grim, joyless experiences. Archaeological evidence suggests that Stone Age cultures developed elaborate celebrations around successful births. They understood that bringing new life into the world was cause for tremendous celebration, even in their harsh circumstances. The bond between Stone Age mothers and their children was intensely powerful, forged through the knowledge that both had survived against incredible odds. These women didn't take their children's lives for granted because they understood, viscerally, how close they'd all come to never existing. This created parent-child relationships of extraordinary depth and appreciation that modern families, blessed with medical safety nets, rarely experience. Stone Age mothers also developed innovative child-rearing techniques that maximized their babies' chances of survival. They perfected techniques for keeping infants warm in harsh climates, developed optimal feeding strategies when food was scarce, and created early childhood education systems that prepared their kids for the realities of Stone Age life. Every aspect of parenting was informed by the hard-won knowledge that life was precious and fragile. The sisterhood that emerged from shared birth trauma created some of the strongest social bonds in human history. Women who had helped each other through childbirth formed lifelong alliances that transcended family lines and tribal politics. These relationships became the foundation for complex social networks that helped entire communities survive through famines, migration, and other crises. What's fascinating is how these women managed to maintain hope and optimism despite facing such overwhelming challenges. They developed rich oral traditions filled with stories of successful births, heroic mothers, and babies who survived against all odds. They created songs and rituals that celebrated fertility and motherhood, transforming what could have been purely traumatic experiences into sources of community pride and identity. The knowledge systems they developed were incredibly sophisticated, passed down through generations of mothers who understood that their daughters' lives literally depended on learning everything possible about pregnancy and childbirth. This wasn't casual parenting advice. This was a curriculum for survival that took years to master fully. The legacy of Stone Age maternal resilience continues to shape who we are today in ways most people never realize. The genetic traits that helped our female ancestors survive childbirth, higher pain tolerance, stronger immune systems, better stress response are still present in modern women. Every mother today carries within her DNA the accumulated survival wisdom of thousands of generations of Stone Age women who refuse to give up. Modern research has revealed that women who experience difficult childbirth often develop increased mental toughness and confidence that serves them throughout their lives. Stone Age women, who faced incomparably more challenging births, must have developed psychological resilience that influenced every aspect of their existence. They became the leaders, decision-makers, and wisdom keepers of their communities because they'd proven they could handle anything life threw at them. The techniques Stone Age women developed for coping with pain, managing fear, and finding strength in community support have influenced modern childbirth preparation methods. Lamaze breathing, birthing positions, and the emphasis on having supportive people present during labor all trace their roots back to discoveries made by our Stone Age ancestors through necessity and desperation. Perhaps most importantly, Stone Age mothers proved that the human spirit is virtually unbreakable when it comes to protecting and nurturing the next generation. They showed that love for our children can motivate us to endure the unendurable, survive the unsurvivable, and find hope in the most hopeless circumstances. Today, when modern mothers complain about pregnancy discomforts or worry about childbirth, they're participating in an unbroken chain of maternal experience that stretches back 40,000 years. The difference is that now we have the luxury of complaining because we have medical safety nets our ancestors could never have imagined. Every successful birth today, whether natural or assisted by modern medicine, is a victory not just for that individual family, but for the entire human species. It represents the culmination of thousands of years of maternal courage, wisdom, and determination that began with Stone Age women who looked death in the eye and chose life anyway. Conclusion: the next time you hear someone casually mention how natural childbirth used to be, remember the Stone Age mothers who paid the ultimate price to bring us into existence. These weren't the romanticized simpler times we sometimes imagine. They were brutal, terrifying, and deadly. Yet somehow, through sheer determination, incredible community support, and an unshakable commitment to the future of humanity, these extraordinary women not only survived but created the foundation for everything we are today. That their story isn't just ancient history. It's the origin story of human resilience itself. Every mother who has ever found strength she didn't know she possessed. Every woman who has endured pain for her children's sake. Every person who has refused to give up when the odds seemed impossible is carrying forward the legacy of Stone Age maternal courage. What challenges in your own life suddenly seem more manageable when you realize what the women who came before us accomplished with nothing but determination and each other? Let me know in the comments what aspect of Stone Age motherhood surprised you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories about the people who shaped our world through their extraordinary courage.